Hi. That's our fancy, semi-fancy new intro.
I love it.
Debbie G hosts these things with me a lot. And she's so good at orchestrating all that stuff, and I'm kind of fumbling around with it. But we got it done.
Yay!
So welcome, Andrea St. Amand, one of my favorite guests, favorite people in general.
Thank you.
Welcome to Tya Talk. As I sip coffee here. So we are live right now on Facebook and our YouTube channel. And as people sign on, what we're going to be talking about today, I guess I should introduce you a little more formally. So apparently I'm not awake yet either. So Andrea is a good friend of mine. We have done lots of lives together over the years. She has interviewed the stream. She is actually, you are an evidential psychic medium.
Correct.
You do a lot of work with people who have crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
And very famously, you've been on television shows, and you have a very large following yourself of people that are really, really, really into that stuff. And the cool thing about Andrea is that she did a reading of the stream one time, and that was really out there because you're used to reading people, and you're used to reading what we call strands of consciousness that are crossed over people. But in the case of the stream, you are reading source, essentially.
Yeah, that was fascinating because people who have already transitioned away, they'll still feel like a soul. You know, if it's the soul of a dog or a cat or a mom or a human, and they'll come in with the role and all the emotions, with their human life to connect with their loved ones, to have that connection as if they were still in that same role. The stream was like, literally, I think it's so aptly named because it was like getting, I don't want to say multiple voices, but it was like more like a river. It wasn't like a defined soul, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
Really
I understand it because there was a time, it's always been there for me, but certainly it's become more pronounced over the years. The more I allow it and don't fear it,
right.
The more pronounced it's become. And of course, my sharing it with other people and other people drawing it out has made it really flow. Another stream reference there. But there was a time that I haven't used a whole lot of drugs in my lifetime of any sort. I'm not against any of that stuff. I just don't.
Need it.
I didn't know anything about edibles. And somebody had left this edible, I live in Southern California where you can walk into a dispensary and buy any of this stuff legally. And we had some friends that came to visit from out of state, and they left all this stuff at our house because they didn't want to take it on the plane back to their state where it was illegal. And so there was this brownie. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll get a little, because I've smoked weed. I smoked weed in high school, and I've smoked off and on, certainly, and had the little experience of getting a little silly or a little giggly, And I thought, well, I'll try this brownie, and I'll have a lovely brownie, and I'll have this relaxing experience. Well, I ate the whole thing. And I didn't know that you're not supposed to eat the whole brownie.
I wouldn't know that either. I've never had one, actually.
It didn't come with instructions, but apparently you're supposed to have a nibble of the brownie. And if you eat the whole thing, you're really taking.
You need the Alice in Wonderland, do not eat.
Yeah. So in this experience of eating the whole brownie, luckily I was at home and I went way down the rabbit hole, alternate universes. I just had all these crazy experiences. And I remember, I remember hearing the stream. I was cognizant enough to say, I want to dial into the stream, and I know how to do that. And when I dialed into the stream, I heard what I could only describe as 1,000 voices in 1,000 languages I've never heard before. And somehow I understood all of it as it was all speaking.
It's not cacophonous. It's not like crazy. It was just, so cool.
Yeah. So that's what the stream is. So Andrea has experienced the stream in a different way, maybe than anybody else, but that was a really, really, really cool experience. But what we're talking about in this episode of Tya Talk, I want to get into ancestral ties and other lives and things like that. And the stream has very specific teachings around all that stuff. But what I want to get is your perspective on all that. How much does that impact our current human experience? How much of that do we bring in? What's the value of tapping into all that?
Well, my first answer is, how much does it impact you? As much as it matters in this current life. So one of the things that I will say, both in terms of mediumship messages or messages from your guides or tapping into your own past life, if you do it with curiosity, if your intent is curiosity, then the only thing you're going to get back is curiosity. But if you do it of like, give me what I need, which might not be what you think you need, and it might not be what you want, but it's okay, what do I need right now? That's a whole different intention. And so, you might get a glimpse of who you were in a past life if you're still carrying that same pattern, that same grief, the same karma, the same stuff. And it's just operating here all over again, just with different faces and a different set of circumstances, but it's kind of the same thing. Then I think that's helpful. I think it's really helpful to be like, oh my gosh, my grandma always did this, or I did this in my past life. At what point am I going to become consciously aware and work through this so I'm free and I can live a more expansive life here? So that's always my intent. My intent is, whenever I'm communicating with any discarnate being, is how's it going to be for the highest and best good for your life right now, so you can live your most soulful, fully expressed existence while you're here. And every medium is different, but I always say with mediumship, let's say a soul comes in, they're not coming in just to like have coffee with you. They're coming in to be like, this might be the only time I get to talk to my grandson, who I can see what he needs me to say. I don't need to talk about all this other chit chat, but the stuff that those souls bring up, they are bringing it up for a reason. So they might bring up a childhood memory, they might bring up but it's not just chit chat. It literally will link into a full story and a full deep meaning for what you need at this time. And you never know what that is going into a session.
Yeah, it's funny. The stream said a long time ago that a lot of times, and I love that you describe yourself as evidential, because they said that when you have these experiences, a lot of times the person that's doing the reading, they are receiving this confirmation so that you will relax and believe what is about
Right.
to be offered to you, rather than just thinking, okay, this is just BS, it doesn't mean anything. The
Right.
evidence is important,
Right.
because you could be tapping into anything, everything, or really nothing at all,
Right.
on the other side of it. And when you have that confirmation that, okay, nobody would know that. When I was told that I was a channel, the Hazel Burley, who told me that I was a channel years and years ago, she provided all this evidence up front before we got into all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is that when I went to see her, she had me do some kind of bizarre stuff. She had me pick out chips of Formica. Remember,
Oh,
we used to have Formica countertops, and
yeah.
you pick out these little color chips, and were
Yeah.
endless colors. She had me pick colors, and
Oh,
then she had
fun.
me do some handwriting, and I'm already thinking, oh, this is BS. What is
Right.
this? And then I just decided, it kind of, the stream came in and said, "What, you're here, you paid for this. Why not relax into this and give this some power?" Okay. I'll do that. So I did. And then what followed after that, it was just a process,
Yeah.
just to get into me. That's all that
Yeah.
was. And then she starts telling me all this stuff that she could have not possibly known. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm at the edge of my seat. Tell me everything. Everything that she said has turned out now to have meaning. Even
Right.
her predictions of some future stuff
Yeah.
turned out to have meaning, because I asked her something about the future. And I remember her telling me that I was going to live in this big, beautiful home on a mountain, and that everyone was going to come visit me. And I lived in Florida, and I
Yeah.
didn't really have plans to leave Florida at that time. And I remember, well, yeah, this house on a mountain, where the hell is that going to be, right?
Right.
Sure enough, I moved to Seattle, and I bought this, big house on top of a mountain in Seattle, in Washington State, outside of Seattle. And everybody that I knew wanted to come to, the
Sure.
Pacific Northwest and visit. And we had all these guest rooms, so we had people coming and visiting all the time. And it hit me that, oh wow, yeah, this came true. This was a real thing. She actually tapped into a reality
Yeah.
of the future and dialed into something that I actually manifested. So that
Yeah.
was really, really, really cool. So the tapping into the other realm, it's not really the other realm. It's the realm that we're in, right?
Right. Right.
This is the energetic realm.
Right.
And what the stream says is that when we are not in physical, we are source, essentially. We are all that. But there is a strand of consciousness that is specific to that experience.
Right.
And tell me if I'm off base here, but it seems like you are really, really, really adept at tapping into that strand of consciousness as it serves the person that you're doing the reading for.
Right. Yeah, that's what I do. That's my goal.
Yeah.
It might not be, though, I always tell you, it might not be what you're expecting. It might not be what you think you need, and it might not be what you want. But it should validate something there deep within you that you're like, now, like what you said, it's going to have meaning. And it might not even have meaning right away. In fact, some of my favorite readings are when I'm telling somebody something. This happened recently with a mother who lost her son. And I said, there's a rock in his things. And I'm like, I know he's not the type of guy who's going to have a rock. I know he's not that guy. She's like, we've gone through everything. There's no rock. There's no rock. I'm like, he's telling me there's a rock. And it's this size. It can fit in the palm of your hands. And it's something that he wants you to find because you can squeeze it. It'll have use something physical that you can hold on to. So everything was had no meaning. I was making it up. I mean, she wasn't mean about that. But sure enough, after the reading, they all go tearing back through his things. And they found a heart-shaped, polished river rock that could fit in Mom's palm of her hand that she could just grasp and feel. Then that's my son. My son sent that to me. It's beautiful. So things do have meaning. You're right.
And I love that. I love that. And that really is the value in that stuff. The entertainment value of it. The stream talks about parlor tricks. Yeah. You know, sometimes people say, well, if you're source and you're all knowing, then what about this and what about that? And they're like, we're not about parlor tricks. You know, we're giving you guidance here. Their guidance is always inward. And
it's precise. It's not, I can't, you're right. It's not curiosity. It's not what are the winning lottery numbers. Although one of my clients just had that experience with herself last week. Not kidding you, but she didn't listen to it. She and her brother always played the lottery. And her brother would tease her because whatever number she'd pick, she wouldn't pick the number. She'd go one up and one down. Like the last number, one up, one down. Her brother came to her in a dream after he passed away, and he showed her he worked at a hospital, so he had an ID badge to get in and out of the hospital. And he showed her this ID badge, and she woke up clear as day, knowing there must have been some number on that badge. So she went and got the badge. She played the number, but she didn't play the one up and one down. She just played his number. And the winning ticket was one down. So sometimes they really do. They're going to have fun with us.
Yeah.
But we have to trust. You have to trust your own intuition, your own instinct. She understood that communication. But if she had followed it, then she'd have a little extra Christmas money for his kids. So,
wow.
So sometimes there's fun in there, but that would have been a real meaningful thing. It's not,
Yeah, it's funny to think of the energetic realm as not being humorous, but if you think of all the things that we love in life, they're all expressions of source, right?
Yeah.
Art, music, all expressions of source. And why would humor not be an expression of source?
And when we laugh, and when we do things that make us feel completely and utterly ridiculous, our energy goes up. And when our energy goes up, the easier it is to connect with our higher selves, with our loved ones, with that wisdom.
Yeah, that's why I think I love comedy. Mm-hmm. And I love being able to laugh at ourselves, which I think is a very important quality in a human being. Yes. It does seem like a lot of society is sort of losing its sense of humor because we get offended by it. Well, we don't, but some get offended by everything. I don't get offended by anything. I love making fun of everything, and I love comedians that make fun of everything, including themselves.
Yes.
I think if it's funny, it's funny. And if you take things too seriously, you can make yourself miserable in this lifetime. And I have always been a fan of stand-up comedians and not bothering to be offended by any of it. And sometimes I go for the most offensive of the offensive because, again, if it's just comedy, there's nothing funnier to me than a roast because
Yeah.
in the roast, they're all there by choice.
There's a truth in all that. There's truth in all of that.
Oh, sure. That's why
That's
it's so
why we're
fun. You're
laughing.
taking something and amping it up, and everyone's laughing at it. And if you're participating in it and you're laughing at it too, that everybody's raising their vibration.
Absolutely. And think of how much pressure, I don't know about you, but as calm and cool and collected as I may sometimes appear to be on camera or on in front of a live audience, I'm not. I'm a nervous wreck, and I put a tremendous amount of pressure on myself before I step on stage or before I step in front of a camera. But if I can just cool it and use all of that pressure I'm putting on myself as high vibrational, like good energy, it's a whole different ballgame. So laughing at myself and not putting all that pressure on myself has been a huge, huge trick for me, to get myself over the anxiety of showing up. And I think a lot of people stepping into the spiritual realm, whether they're going to trust you or trust me or start to begin to trust like their own wisdom, like you said earlier, there's all that fear, there's all that anxiety, and there's a lot of pressure that suddenly comes with all of that.
Well, and that's what you're getting into, and it's one of my favorite topics. So I'm glad you brought it up. Is the transmutation of energy, turning that energy is energy, and
Yeah.
you can take it. It's like clay, and you can remold it
Mm-hmm.
into something that works for you instead of against you.
There's
I've
a
had a splitting headache, and I have lower back pain still pretty regularly. It's returned in
yeah.
the last couple of years, and and I used to really push against it, like, oh, I'm all about, I have to solve this lower back pain. It can never be a thing again because I'm Mr. Manifestation. And then I've really come to appreciate the experience we're in, the experience we're having. And the stream talks about spin outs, that we have spin
Mm,
outs on different topics. And there's so much gold in the spin out if you learn to appreciate it. So whatever it is, even if it's something that society tells you you're not supposed to be experiencing, going into the deep appreciation of it,
yeah.
that's where all the gold is available to you in the experience. So I had this lower back pain going on, and then I also had this splitting headache, and I think it's because I drank a bunch of red wine and no water and went to bed, which I
Yeah.
know not to do. So in this splitting headache in the middle of the night, it woke me up, and I remember just taking the headache and moving the headache down my spine into that lower back space, and the power of the headache quelled the lower back pain, and then it all dissipated and it moved out of my body.
Wow.
It was a
That
very,
is
and I've used that
cool.
several times since then.
That
So
is cool.
what you're describing about the anxiety is so many celebrities, so many performers, singers, and things like that will say that they never get over the nerves, but
Yeah.
the nerves fuel them ultimately. That's what puts them out there. It's facing the fear
Yeah.
and using that energy for good,
Yeah.
using that energy to propel you in the way that you want it to propel you. I think that's one of my favorite topics, because we're not taught that.
No, we're taught anxiety is bad, run away from it at all costs. Fear is bad.
Take a
All
pill
these
for
things
it.
are bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of seeing it, like you used to call it the experience, and I've started calling it sensation. I'm like, okay, got some high sensation going on right now. Now I'm not going to put myself in front of a bus or anything, but it's just that anytime there's physical pain that is manageable or just high sensation, it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this? Maybe nothing. Maybe we just need to sit with it instead of being railing against it and getting angry at it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that, because we're taught to demonize things.
Yeah.
And the Tya practice and the stream's teachings are all about, don't demonize anything. Because if you demonize something, you're just giving that version of it power. You're giving it life.
Right.
You're keeping it around. We have evidence of that everywhere
Yeah.
in our lives across humanity. So somebody has a question on here. When someone has dementia, do their minds cross over before their body?
That's a good question. I think so. Yes. Because I think it's a going up, it's a coming in and out situation, which is why some people with Alzheimer's live so long. They're doing that. They're actually, from our perspective, looking at them, they might be very uncomfortable because we're uncomfortable seeing our loved one in that state. But I have heard so many times over and over again from souls, and of course, they're all different, but I have heard so many times when souls have finally crossed over, they want their loved ones to know that while they were in that state, they are coming and going, and they're very comfortable. They feel safe, they feel comfortable in their body, and they feel comfortable coming in and out. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing. Even though if they come back in and they're fully cognizant of what's going on in our reality, they might get agitated. It's because that transition might be a little bit difficult for them. But yeah, I think there's a definite coming in and out period. And the other thing is when I read souls who are still with us, they're still incarnate, and this could be they're in hospice or they've got a form of dementia, they'll feel to me the same as a soul who's crossed over. And I won't know
There,
the difference.
I view all of that as they're experiencing the energetic realm on a higher level than those of us that are more focused in 3D.
Yeah, they're
And
aware of
that
it.
includes people that are labeled as insane or having
Yeah.
quote unquote disorders,
Mm-hmm.
people with different, all types of different disorders. And certainly as we age, and I love what the stream says about the aging process, is that our intention was never to come here and be in physical indefinitely. Our intention absolutely is to come and have a temporary experience and return
Right.
to our completed state. And our consciousness takes us out in different ways of this experience. And you're right, I
Yeah.
agree with that completely, that it's this sort of partially in this world and partially in the energetic realm, and really simultaneously experiencing both. And you're absolutely right in that it just makes us uncomfortable because
Yeah.
it's not this 3D reality that we're taught we're supposed to be in. And if
Yeah.
we're not in that, then something's wrong, and it's a
Yeah.
disorder, and it's bad, and it's wrong, and we need to cure it, we need to heal it, we need to fix it. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with trying to to learn about it and even change it, but it is the eternal being releasing the physical being and understanding that
Yeah.
the energetic realm does not operate on a linear timeline like we do. So that
Right.
whole, there were 10 years in this state. My mother had Parkinson's, and I didn't have a relationship with her at the end of her life. But when I understand, the last 10 years of her life was in and out and really bad. And, all of these things that we could label as, oh,
Yeah.
that shouldn't have been. But, I've had a better relationship with her in her
Yeah.
completed state than I did in life.
Right.
And there's no regret about that
Right.
experience whatsoever. It's just that's the experience that was.
Right. And I think they're getting themselves comfortable and just enjoying being able to be, I'm out and then I'm back in my body and I'm out. It's almost playful. And I think they do that until they get ready to fully release.
Yeah, and I think for all those of us, the loved ones that are observing that, being in deep appreciation of the experience that is being offered there.
Yeah.
That applies to everything and everyone.
There's a theory, and I really like this theory, and it's in hospice, that when you see, usually if somebody's in hospice, they're only there for a couple weeks, couple days, but they'll say it's very common for your loved ones to be going through that transitional state. They might open their eyes, look at you, and have a conversation with you that makes no sense to you, but to them it might make sense. And that the idea is that they're getting to work through, while they're still here in the physical, work through things that are unresolved in their own minds or unresolved in their own hearts. And to have that gift is tremendous. And so if, like your mother, if she wanted to work through things for 10 years, she got to do it on her own terms.
Yeah,
And
she didn't particularly enjoy her 3D reality. I was not ever aware of
yeah,
her enjoying being, in her life. And I think the last 10 years she created a scenario where you're right. She developed more value of this human experience
yeah,
for herself and the disconnecting from it and drawing that out in what we consider was a period of time.
yeah,
But again, in the energetic realm, it's all consciousness. So there is no linear time. Everything
yeah,
is just the experience that is always, it just is.
right.
And that's like a really cool way to look at all human suffering,
Yeah,
really, is that we are judging it from our perspective, and very often our perspective of, ooh, I don't ever want that to happen to me, so
right.
I don't want that to happen to you because I don't know how to deal with it.
Because
But
I can't take it. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, but we're not in it, we're not the one having the experience. And at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to end our consciousness happening here in physical. Nothing.
yeah,
That's why I love comedy, because we can laugh at everything if we choose to,
yeah,
because there's nothing that serious going on here. We make it big, we make it serious, we want to demonize and fight and battle. but that judgment of the human experience creates 100% of our suffering.
Yeah, totally true.
So, as far as I know, you were really busy in October. So, tell us about that a little bit. What were some of the things that you did in October leading up to Halloween, which is why everyone comes a calling around Halloween for you, including me. I'm like, hey, it's Halloween. Let's get Andrea. Oh, Andrea's booked up for 2 months. Okay, great.
It didn't really slow down. It's not slowing down for December either. But I do a lot of my sort of bread and butter is I do individual readings and small group readings. But I had a big, wonderful event here in Charleston, South Carolina, where I got to partner up with a friend of mine who's the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula. And a lot of people think Dracula is like the horror movie Bela Lugosi, two-dimensional monster coming to suck your blood. It's a brilliant, brilliant novel, and it's a brilliant story. And so we gave a presentation at the Library Society here, which is a big, fancy, intellectual, beautiful hall. But talking about the spirituality and the wisdom and the humanness that Bram Stoker was really involved with his daily life and his explorations into psychic mediumship phenomenon, all things spiritual, and how he infused those into this brilliant monster. So to bring all of that together in a very literary setting was huge. It was huge for me. I think it was a big deal for the audience. It was really cool to be part of something like that in a mainstream venue. And speaking of spirituality going mainstream, I'm also going to be the psychic at our South Carolina Aquarium's annual black tie event in December. So I'll be in the aquarium with all these wonderful animals and water and lights and be delivering messages. So that to me is like, I'm going mainstream. I'm coming out
Yeah, I
from
love
under my
that.
little spiritual rock. So David, I mean, even though you've got a lot of people, you talk to a lot of people, I feel like I reach a lot of people, but being hosted by something that is mainstream is like, it's like a whole different area of us to be able to reach out and connect with people and touch people, or maybe like give them a little hello, your soul is calling. Hello.
Yeah, I think spirituality in general is definitely going more mainstream. You hear people say little things like I was listening to. It was several months ago, but I was listening to a country radio station. I listen to all kinds of music, so it just depends on my mood.
Yep.
And they were talking about manifestation on a country radio station. Like, okay, this is
That's
different.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. And you hear people say, I manifested
Yep.
this and I attracted this, everybody has some awareness.
Yeah.
I think the reason that people get frustrated or don't go too deep into it, one, because they're taught to fear it, especially around religions teach you that anything that isn't their religion is
Right.
awful and
Right.
dark and don't go there. You should fear
Right.
it. I was on a podcast recently that had a very, very broad audience, and I was channeling, and about half the audience loved it, and half the audience was like, "He's a demon. Get him off the podcast."
Oh wow.
So, and that's cool. That's everybody's belief system. But the interesting thing that I heard, I watched that Adele concert that was just on TV, I guess.
Yeah.
I watched it on demand, and interspersed in this concert was an interview with Oprah. And Adele told Oprah that she is this one kind of silly, funny person. And then there's this other version of her. She says, my singing is not me, it's channeled.
Oh, wow.
It was really cool. It was really, really cool to hear Adele, that how mainstream can Oprah and Adele, you can't get more mainstream than that. So just to hear her say it's channeled. When I sing, I'm channeling, it's coming from somewhere else. That's not me. Everything else is me.
I'm glad you said that, because I've always thought that I've wondered that about her songwriting. And I thought, well, the reason she's so popular and she can connect with so many people is because the emotion that she's writing about, the one little vignette, she can just say it so crystal clearly, and all of us get it. All of us get the breakup, or all of us get the nostalgia, or whatever it is she's talking about. And it's brilliant.
Yeah, well, and there's so much depth and character to what she's offering.
Right.
Between the writing and the performing of it, That's why everyone loves it so
Yep.
much. And then there's pop music that is different than that. There's pop music that's very manufactured.
Yep.
It's written by a committee of writers and it's
Right.
produced, and it can still be good, but it just doesn't have that same vibe
Yeah.
to it
The
of that
resonance. It's the
that that
resonance.
place. Yeah, that place where she's able to take you. And that's why she's Adele. And that's
Yeah.
why we all love her, right? So if you have more questions for Andrea or me or anything, if there's anything in general you want to talk about, you can put that in the comments. If you are watching, just type in a comment and say hello. Let us know where you are. We like that as well. And if you want to share this, if you're on the Facebook page, you can share this wherever you want to share it. We love to share Tya Talk out to anyone that might be interested in it. And certainly sharing Andrea with the world is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Thank you in advance.
So the ancestral thing is interesting because I know a lot of people have beliefs that we are here to heal ancestral wounds, and the stream has gotten into that a little bit. But do you get into that much in your work?
See the face I'm making. One thing to keep in mind is we are all divine beings with free will. And if our ancestors have their wounds that they do not want healed, we can't heal them. And we shouldn't even think like egoically that we can heal other souls. I think that's a little bit of spiritual bypassing, to think that, or to think that this soul is stuck and me as a human with my very limited perspective, I can go heal and help them. I think that's ignoring the only person you have any effect over or control over is yourself and healing yourself. What I do think is significant, and this comes up a lot in readings, or when we do our healing, we do our awareness and we're like, oh my gosh, I witnessed this relationship between my grandparents. Maybe some of that affected me and my growth, or maybe I'm doing some of those same things in my relationship. When we heal that, I think that does have a ripple effect up the chain. But it's our healing and our awareness and our understanding that has that ripple effect. And I do think a lot of people kind of put themselves aside and go, let me go heal my dead great grandmother. I
Yeah,
don't think
well,
it
it's
is.
kind of a more of an ego.
It is very ego driven.
Yeah, ego driven thing for sure. We talked about this in the boot camp group meeting just yesterday.
Uh,
This idea that we're supposed to heal all these other things, but what it is that all of those other things contribute to our human experience because we're bringing our own eternal consciousness
yeah,
in, which is really, if you think about it, if you're bringing in all of source, and you are, but you're bringing it into a human situation, you vibrationally align with your
yeah,
point of entry, i.e., your parents, then you're coming into this human experience and allowing your human consciousness to be focused in the earth environment. And it really overshadows all that
right.
so that you can have this unique human journey, but it definitely flavors the journey because
Sure.
we are
Absolutely.
here developing our operating system
You're right.
based on
Right.
what we experienced early on in life. That's why people in mental health often take you back to early childhood
Right.
because the whole path is really set up then.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we can't change that.
Absolutely. Because changing our perspective of it or using those experiences to understand how they shaped the beautiful being that we are today, our unique self that we are today, and then being able to have empathy for other people who are going through that. That's incredible. That's an incredible gift to be able to give to ourselves, other people here still on this planet, and that ripple effect back up the chain. I have heard so many ancestors when they come in really compliment or be so proud of their descendants who have stopped a pattern of behavior. They've worked through it. They used the lessons that those earlier generations went through and embodied it in this generation and was able to change, a family pattern. It's tremendous. But it's all here. It all starts with us.
Definitely, because I love the teachings around we are here becoming a more sophisticated strand of consciousness.
Yeah.
And our
Boom.
experiencing
Yeah.
physical, the contrast of physical is what creates that higher degree of sophistication. And
Yeah.
that's true in our individual journey. It's true for the collective of humanity, for Earth, for the whole universe. It all ripples out, like you said.
Yeah.
And the coming together, think about the history, the history that we're aware of humanity. In our awareness, recorded history is just a blip in comparison to all
Yeah.
that even humanity is, and especially the Earth environment and the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this recorded history, this very limited history, there's been no other time that we're aware of where we could get together and communicate like this.
Right.
And that's what's changing everything. That's what's causing this big shift, because I'm 53 and I've lived enough now to where I can say, gosh, I've never lived in a time where things were this upside down as they've been in the last 2 years.
Right.
But I see the why it's upside down. I see the value of it, and I see this splintering of humanity where more and more and more of us are delving into all of this. Let's really
Yeah.
find out why we're here. Let's make sense of humanity let's make sense of the unfair reality that we experience. But we also see people go in the opposite direction,
Mm-hmm.
doubling down on victimhood and doubling down
Right.
on everything is wrong and the earth is going to be destroyed, and humanity is spiraling out of control, and this is the worst time ever, and
Yeah.
conspiracies left and right and all this kind of stuff. But your reality doesn't have to be that.
Well, and again, that's putting all of your focus externally and
Yeah.
on things that you can't control, but that are a part of you because they're part of our culture. So one of the things that I think you were getting at a little bit that I wanted to just add to was that idea of, our ancestors, and we're born with the DNA of our ancestors. And there's, also within that DNA, though, is the collective consciousness. And so it's not just our direct lineage that we pay attention to in mediumship. It's your friends who have passed away, your pets who have passed away, your colleagues, your mentors, all these other people, because they were part of your consciousness while you were here. And then there
Yeah,
is
we call
the
that
collective.
vibrational neighbors. I love that.
Yeah, I love
We're
that.
all, the stream
Yeah.
is set a long time ago, and I love this. And we actually have used this I'm about to change
Oh,
all my backdrop, but right now I love to use this piece of art
yeah.
because I just picked it out for my office. I didn't think anything about it, and then I was channeling one time and the stream starts using this as an example. I'm like, oh my god, that's why I picked it. It's so cool.
That's so cool.
So they talk about, if you take a piece of rope and you slice it, you see all these little filaments that are
Yeah.
twisted together to make little strings, and those are twisted together to make little smaller pieces of rope, and that
Yeah.
just infinitely goes out, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about the strands of consciousness, that's what we are. And we have
Yeah.
these vibrational neighbors that we're tightly wound
Yeah.
with. And then we have others, but we're all the same. It's all the
Yeah.
collective consciousness of source. But when we're in physical, we are experiencing it as a strand of consciousness,
Yeah.
so that we can have this independent experience. And the thing that the stream teaches that is so opposite than so many teachings, that ends up making a lot of sense for people that follow their teachings, is that we are here on our own. We are not here being controlled
Right.
by an external force. The whole point of this physical environment is that we project in with a consciousness
Yeah.
into a set of circumstances, and we begin manifesting our experience from conception. And then
Yeah.
from there, we have this manifested journey, and our human operating system essentially is how we choose to respond to what we manifest.
Right.
And that creates our operating
Totally.
system until we decide we want to consciously change it, if we do.
Right.
And the value of the ancestral stuff really is the vibration that is passed along. And it is a vibration. It
Mm-hmm.
expresses itself in culture and beliefs and traditions and all that, but that's just the expression of the vibration.
Yeah.
So I broke every
You
I broke
did.
all those things in my life because I'm nothing like my family. And that was it created contrast for me, though, because I projected in, and I
Sure.
remember very early on thinking, I'm not like these people. I'm very different from them. I was always more grandiose.
Yeah.
I was always told that
Yep.
I was born into the wrong family. I
Yeah,
should
I
have
was
been
thinking that.
Rockefeller and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized that was just my journey.
Right.
That was what I chose. I chose to be different
Yeah.
than what I was projecting into, to develop through all of this contrast, and all the contrast has now served me because it's all this platform from which I
Sure.
teach.
Well, absolutely. But you can also then really deeply understand everybody else who's been in your shoes with a tremendous amount of empathy because you've been there.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely understand the feeling of I don't belong here. I even, I talk to people that say they don't belong on the planet. I do believe that we
Oh,
intentionally come to the planet.
I agree with
We
you.
want to experience the Earth environment. We want to be what we are, even if what we are doesn't fit into what society tells us we're supposed to be.
That's part of our
So,
journey.
what's that?
That's part of the journey. And part
Yeah.
of the journey really is leaning into the resistance. And a lot of us with whatever we're manifesting will either just put puppies and butterflies around it and be like, oh, it's great. And that might be sort of a false positive, but we're not wanting to go down a spiral or be negative. But really, if like half of what we're experiencing we're okay with, but the other half we really have tremendous resistance to, tremendous resistance. If we kind of lean into that resistance and acknowledge it, one, that's the gold mine you're talking about. And
Hmm.
two, that's like it, as soon as the resistance is acknowledged and leaned into, it just dissipates like melted butter. Because there, I think about this happens to me. I'll get an opportunity, and from the outside looking, it's a great opportunity. And the first thing is like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have to show up for it. All the anxiety starts going up. All the reasons I shouldn't do it. I can't. And if I overthink it, I'll shoot myself in the foot. But I have to acknowledge the resistance. I have to be like, okay, something in me is resisting because I'm scared, or I don't want to have the exposure. I don't, what if I'm made fun of? What if everybody thinks I've gone off the deep end? Because if y'all don't know, I used to be a partner in a national law firm. So I'm sure all my old partners, like half of them are like, we don't even want to acknowledge she ever worked for us. But I still have all of that, peer pressure, the judgment, like, what if people think I've just gone crazy? They're still out there, even 10 years out now. But the more I lean into that resistance and just acknowledge there's going to be resistance or whatever it is, what is it? What is my resistance? The quicker it just goes away and I can transmute that energy. I can get on top of that anxiety and use that anxiety to propel me into showing up how I need to show up so I can serve myself and serve my clients.
I
But
love that. And what I always say, my mantra, and I'm not a big mantra person, but my mantra is, if I remove fear and judgment, how do I feel about it?
oh, I love that.
That's the clarity of source. We call it zooming
Yeah.
out. If you
Yeah.
remove fear and judgment, you are at one with source, because source does not hold fear nor judgment. Those are human egocentric things. If you
Yeah.
take the fear and judgment out of it, how do you feel about it? Then you get down to preference. Is it
Yeah.
my preference to do this, or is it not? Because very often
Yeah.
the things that we think aren't our preference are centered around fear and judgment.
Right. And then
Yeah.
that also removes all the shoulds. That really gets rid of, because a lot of times we do stuff because we think we should do it. We should do it. We should do it. We should do it. But
Mhm.
if you just check in and there's no fear and judgment and you still
Yeah.
don't want to do it,
Do I want to do it or not?
I don't want to do it. That's
My
not me.
preference is I don't want to do it.
I
Without fear,
don't,
without judgment, I don't want to do it. And that's
still don't
okay.
want to do
Yeah.
it.
Well,
So,
it's so funny because if we're below neutral, if we are less than, so we use the term neutral just because I believe we're always connected to source, but
mhm.
there's sort of this tipping point we create in the teachings to signify, okay, neutral is this midpoint. We don't spend much time in neutral. Above neutral, we're fully connected to source,
Yeah.
amping all the way up to just pure joy. And then below neutral, we can do, we're just going down into lower and lower vibrational emotion. But below neutral, you are not capable of any new thought, because you're completely
Absolutely.
rooted in
100%.
ego and you're
Yeah.
recycling. When you
Yeah.
get above neutral, you're creative. That's your
Yeah.
source connection. That's the creative part of you. That's where your solutions reside. So
Yeah.
when you're judging something as, this shouldn't be, I shouldn't be doing this, or if you're frustrated by something and you're down there, you're going to stay in that cycle because there's nothing new being offered. It's just recycled thought. You've got to find appreciation to get above.
you are hitting on something that, and it's a very natural process in grief, but you're hitting on something, one of my most asked questions. When somebody is really deeply in grief, and it's usually a case of traumatic, like a traumatic loss, and then they'll feel like, let's say it's somebody's spouse that's passed away. Like, why can't I connect with him? Why can't I feel his presence? Why can't, and it's like, well, you are a human and you got to go through a grief process. There's going to be times where you feel like you feel that presence, and there's times where you don't feel that presence. Or there are times when your fear will give you a false or misinterpreted communication from a loved one. Or if there's times where there's people that's like, I need an answer. I'm demanding an answer from the spirit world. I'm demanding it. And you just get a recycled thought of your own. That makes so much sense to me in my experience with clients, David, putting it like looking at that neutral line. It's like, well, that's because your energy is here and there's no way. I mean, spirit can like be beaming in the the lighthouse to you, but you're not going to be able
You're
to.
drowning it out.
You're,
Yeah, there's a
you
smoke
totally.
screen there from your ego.
And you might need to just go through it. You might need to just lay in there for a minute or two until it goes away. But it's it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, and it doesn't mean that the spirit is not there. It doesn't mean source is not there. It just means you're wallowing in the upside down for a little bit.
Yeah, and I fully believe that source is present always and all day.
Always. Always.
There's no escaping source. There's just drowning it out and choose. And that's the contrasting environment.
Yep.
That's in polarity naturally takes us out of our source connection.
Yeah.
But it's there and it's available, but we're not paying attention to it. We're in
Right.
fear. We're in the
Yeah.
matrix, if you will. We talk about that a lot lately. That,
Yeah.
that humanity has
Yeah.
created this matrix, and this is how you're supposed to look, and this
Right.
is how you're supposed to be, and this is what you're supposed to do, and the type of relationship you're supposed to be in, and all these things. That is a human created matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And operating in that matrix is very often you are operating more like a zombie, because you're just doing as you are told and you're not creating. And we are here to create. And think of how unsatisfying it is to just be obedient. And I have some people in my family that are very obedient. In fact,
Yeah.
that is kind of the vibration of my family, is you're supposed to come and do what your religion and your society tells you to do. And you've got to do that. And if you're obedient, you're going to have this version of a good life.
Yep.
And they have a version of what you would call an upper middle class life.
Yeah.
And that's what's sold to us as being something that's very comfortable.
Right.
And I think they're fine in it. That's their experience.
Sure.
I didn't want to have that experience.
Right.
I didn't want to have the obedient. I don't want to be in prison, but
Right.
I didn't want to have the obedient experience as far as just believing without question and being afraid to even question.
Right.
I always questioned, and in my questioning, I realized, okay, this isn't all it is. And if someone's telling me that I must believe and I must do what they say, even though my own inner guidance is telling me the opposite, I'm going to trust my instincts.
Yeah, because
They're there for a reason.
The alternative is prison for you,
Mm-hmm.
and for people like us who need to have expansive thoughts. I will just say though, just to close the loop, that particularly if you're in grief or it's what I call the upside down. Sometimes you have to trust that you're there for a reason, and that you will, like, maybe that reason is to like work yourself through it, and you might come in and out, and it might take a while. It might take a minute. It's going to look different than everybody else's grief process. This is just something I deal with every day. So I have a lot of experience with other people's grief. So don't judge yourself. Don't put fear and judgment on your own upside down process, whatever it is.
Yeah, grieving is a good topic because we are told how to grieve and how long it's supposed to take, and to what degree, depending on the nature of the relationship.
Right.
And what I have encountered is your experience is just that. It's your experience. It's what you've manifested, and there's no wrong or right about it. So if you're not experiencing enough grief,
right,
and you're judging yourself, then you are creating your suffering.
Right.
If you're at peace with the transition or the loss of whatever it is that you're grieving, then that's if you found that authentically, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Even if people think you're nuts.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I worked with a woman whose grandson was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
and she came to work the next day. And people, how could she? I'm like, whoa, no, 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 no. This is just her process.
Yep.
She's here. She's doing her job.
It's what she
Let's
needs to do.
allow her to have her process. And that's how.
Yep.
And I was around her at the funeral, and her daughter ended up going through our boot camp program, and so I
Oh, wow.
maintained an awareness of her, and
Yeah.
that's just how she
Yeah.
experiences things.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that she didn't love her grandson or that she wasn't
Correct.
profoundly changed by it. Of course she
Right.
was, but that's just her process. And
Right.
I saw people immediately jumping into that judgment of this woman who was really in shock.
Sure.
That had to be shocking to suddenly have someone
Absolutely.
removed in such a violent and unexpected
Absolutely.
way. And that's just was her process. Allow
It
her to
is.
be here. We
Yep.
shouldn't send her home
Right.
because
She
now if
might
she were completely destroyed, we would try to do something, but she
but she
wasn't. She
might
was
have
doing her job.
she needed that. She needed to
Yeah.
have some level of normalcy in her new life. Okay, I need to go do work today.
Yeah, I need to go back to normal and process this, and she
I
did.
need to buy
She
myself
did.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I would not ever use that as an example of how to be for somebody else. Well, she was
Yeah.
back the next day. I would never
Yeah.
do that because
Mm-mm.
everybody has their own process. But again, we have the matrix. The
Yeah.
matrix says if we pull out the company handbook, that's going to say you get 3 days or a week.
Yeah.
I think my company literally said 3 days for this type of relative and a 1 week for
Oh
that type of
my
relative.
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, but
There
you were an attorney, you understand that those things are written by attorneys and
oh
there
yeah.
has to be some sort of a guideline. But what I did like is at the end of the day, we never really followed. The guideline was there.
Yeah.
We had plenty
You
of
have to follow it.
authority to say, okay, we're going to throw the book out and it's just going to be what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Grief, one of the comments, grief comes in waves of emotion. It does. And I will tell you, I have lost people really close to me, in my family, and I'm okay with that. And I've lost friends, colleagues that years ago that I'm still in grief over. And the closest person I ever lost 32 years ago. 32 years ago. And my relationship with him and my relationship with grief is still ongoing. So you literally, and it's beautiful, but it is definitely a relationship. You can't, it's really, the process is so different for everybody. And how you experience the love of that person is different from everybody else in that person's life too. So it's your own experience. Going back to, it's all
Everything
you.
is.
It's all
I
you.
love the idea that everything is just a bubble of experiences.
Yep.
That's what our life journey is just a bubble of experience, and none of it is positive or negative or bad or good. In the
It
energetic
is.
realm, it's just all it just is. It's just that's the experience that was manifested in that life, which is just an experience in and of itself. And all of it makes us more sophisticated versions of us, especially the quote unquote bad stuff, because that really challenges us. We have to create from that space
Yeah.
to move forward.
There's a question, am I able to channel and connect with that person? Yes, but I will tell you, I did right when he first passed away. He died in a very, very gruesome, traumatic way that I witnessed. So I had to deal with that. But then I went for years where I didn't connect with him, but that's because I needed to live my 3D life. I needed to get other experiences under my belt, and I need to work through the trauma of what I went through. And then the connection came back. But every dream I have about him, even if it feels very real, it's not accurate. It's not him. It's a dream. It's my ego taking it into some spiraled out thing.
Creating that humanized version for you to
Creating
comprehend.
total.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, what impact did that experience have on what you do now?
Like all of it, everything. Everything. Like, one, I can really help people with traumatic loss because I've been there. And Elisha, I'm just
Elisha. It's Elisha.
Elisha, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I will just say, if you feel like you can't connect with him, it doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't mean he's not there. It's just you needing to go through your process. And a big part of when we lose our love is we have to adapt to our new normal. What's our new normal without my soulmate, or without what the person I consider to be my my partner, my second half? What's my new normal there? And that's just a big part of our 3D reaction, our 3D process. So I think that helps me on a human level really connect with my clients in terms of whatever they've gone through. And mediumship wise, I think all of my experiences with him have helped me trust spirit more. He's helped me trust spirit. Even when I don't connect with him or I don't feel his presence, knowing he's there or trusting that the spirit world, somebody will be there to help me and guide me. And I think that that's a big, and I've always had, he's, most of my life now, he's been crossed over. So knowing that somebody is there who loves me and I love them very deeply has helped me trust the spirit world. They're there. And when my time comes, it's going to be that. I don't want to rush into that, but there's something that makes me feel very heartwarmed to know that soul is on the other side when I need him.
Trust is everything, right?
Yeah.
I always say that's my favorite. That's why we call Tya trust your abundance, is because trust.
And
There's nothing
David,
more valuable than trust.
when we lose people and knowing that they're on the other side waiting on us, that does give us more trust than just something abstract. I think there's guides and souls and source and whatever. It can be very abstract, but when we lose somebody we love, it's like, okay, this is, my human can understand this a little bit more now.
And there's a strand of consciousness that doesn't end with the physical
Yeah.
being that you still have access to. And I want to close that out too by saying that we have to remember that the universe does not judge.
Correct.
And therefore the universe is not benevolent, nor is it, the opposite of benevolent, I guess, evil.
Right.
But the universe doesn't judge. So the universe isn't saying you really missed this person, so we're going to change the universal laws and we're going to give you this connection.
Right.
It doesn't operate like that. That's why life isn't fair and never will be.
Right.
Never will be, because we're not here to have a fair experience. We're here to have a contrasting experience that's individual. Life is not going to be fair no matter how many laws we pass. It's vibrational. It's vibrational. And remember that when you are grieving and you feel that intense need to connect with them, the universe is always going to send you more need.
Yeah,
You're going
it's
to
so
continue
true.
to need to connect with them. Whereas if you just appreciate what is, whatever it is, the more you can go into authentic appreciation. And it's not an easy thing to just, you can't snap your finger and do that. It's a journey. And it may be a journey that takes a lifetime. Yeah. But when you get into that appreciation of what was, and just relax into that, that's when things, whatever it is, generally start to show up. But as long as we think we need that thing, I have found the things that I think I need don't show up.
Right. And we have to trust that there is a wisdom and a perspective out there that's greater than our human perspective.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, and again, this is a blip, right? This lifetime, the stream says this is a weekend trip. It's just a little blip in comparison to all that you are. And you can zoom out to that higher perspective because it's part of us. Of if you go on a weekend trip, just about anything that occurs on a weekend trip, you just end up laughing about at some point.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's just, remember that thing, that time? Oh my gosh, it was awful. It was terrible in the moment. Now we laugh about it.
Yeah.
That's what life really is. In your eternal perspective, nothing ends you. There's nothing that's traumatic in that realm. There's nothing that's damaging. There's nothing that ends you. There's nothing that you can't get through because you don't have to get through it.
Right.
But in the human experience, it seems that way, and we're taught that. But think about how much of that teaching is the matrix.
Yeah.
How much of that teaching is, you're supposed to be upset about this forever.
Right.
You're not supposed to get over that. You're supposed to be damaged forever. You were a victim. This was terrible. It wasn't your fault. Stay in the matrix. Stay a victim. Stay down there in that space where you have no power to transcend from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Beautiful.
What a fantastic discussion as always, Andrea. So tell everyone where they can reach you. You
can reach me at my website or anywhere on Facebook or Instagram, but my website is AndreaSaintAmand.com, and that's all spelled out, AndreaSaintAmand.com.
We'll post, if you're watching this later in the comments, we'll post the website link in the
Awesome.
comments. So you can go right to her website and check her out. And if you want to book her for sessions, she's the best.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I always love talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching and all of your lovely comments and questions. Keep them coming because we do pay attention. We come back and answer
Yep.
things, even if you're watching this in the future. Andrea hangs around in the group sometimes, so she might
Yep.
even see it as well. You can always tag her in
Yes.
something if you have a specific question for her as well. Thank you all for watching. Thanks, Andrea.
Bye.